Friends of NAGARA, welcome to Session 3B, AI-Powered Risk and Records Management, Lorain County's KnowledgeLake Success. This session was originally presented live during the 2025 Spring Online Forum held on Friday, March 28, 2025. Today's presentation is being recorded for the archive on Thursday, April 4th. We're delighted that you've joined us for this recording. And today's presentation is offered by Todd, Sharkey, and Smith for Lorain County, Ohio. For the last 2 years, he and his team have been working on numerous projects to modernize the IT infrastructure for the Lorain County Commissioners. This includes the redesign of the network infrastructure, both wired and wireless, migrating multiple internal domains to Microsoft 365, implementing modern cybersecurity initiatives, and consolidating numerous servers to a VMware platform and storage array. Todd has 25 plus years of experience in IT, covering a wide range of experience across networking, application development, web development, database development, database and software, migrations, Before joining Lorain County, he was the director of IT for the Chapel in Akron, Ohio, which is a large non-denominational church of 7 campuses. And in the 90s, Todd was the information systems analyst for the City of Akron's Engineering Bureau. Gary Smith is an executive managing director at KnowledgeLake, where he leads the company's efforts to improve innovative AI automation and synthetic labor solutions. With over 2 decades of experience in enterprise automation, Gary is committed to driving business efficiency and growth through cutting-edge technology. His leadership has helped KnowledgeLake become a trusted partner for organizations looking to solve high-volume operational challenges and increase productivity. Todd and Gary, we are delighted to have you as our presenters today, and the rest of the time is yours. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate that. The kind introduction, and unfortunately we're not joined here today by our wonderful colleague Marilyn Velez, but she is no doubt a core part of a lot of the things that we'll be going through with you today. And so I think maybe to kind of get us started, we'll do a little bit of a level set here in terms of what we mean when we say AI, what we're talking about when we talk about synthetic labor or synthetic workers, because it is a little bit confusing. And I think some of it is just that there's a difference of terms in the industry. You may hear things like agentic or agentic workflow. These are all kind of interchangeable terms in my mind. But what AI and automation really would be best thought of as is it's a co-worker for county workers. It's not a replacement of humans. That is certainly not the way that KnowledgeLake views the introduction of synthetic labor into organizations. We really believe in replacing poor jobs, not good workers. That's the way I like to look at it. So it's very much as a supportive role, right? Which means it's working with humans to enable humans to not do the lower value add but high volume work that's very time consuming, mistake prone, and it allows humans to get up above and focus on the creative and strategic. We refer to this as working on the business, not working in the business, right? And this is one of those consulting speak terms I think that's come out or that was out and popular the last decade, but it really encapsulates what we're about, right? So we're doing things to enhance human capabilities. It's a collaborative work source, and it's a work source that actually gets trained just like humans with natural language. And you know, over time, we'll probably touch a little bit on what that means. And it's continuously learning. So it adapts from the data that is being ingested, and it's actually learning in very much a similar way to the way a human worker gets better at their job. And of course, it supplements staff. And where this really becomes important is that there's 2 kind of key elements I think that we're living through in life right now. The first is something known as the silver tsunami effect. This is the aging of government workers just in general, and the fact that they are getting to a point where they're retiring and there isn't a large enough pool of applicants to backfill them. Or more frustrating, there aren't the pool of applicants that are looking to go into county work or into state work, municipality work, government work, because they just don't necessarily see the work as being what they want to do. And that's a shame because there's very, very good work to be done there. I just think that we're coming out of a generation that was older and understood that a lot of the things that we had to do, we just had to do. Now there's a lot of things we don't have to do because there is automation and an AI basis to actually accomplish those things. So that's really kind of the baseline from where Todd and I will be forming up our comments. Todd, I'd love to enlist your support here if I could, which is around what we're doing together, which is extremely exciting and really represents a sea change for how work is being done at Lorain County, particularly like in the Records Center where Marilyn Velez runs that area, the Clerk of Courts with their work requirements, and then of course the Clerk of the Board with Teresa Upton and her needs, and then we're doing work within fiscal. So I thought maybe I could turn it over to you because you got a very, very, to me, very clear view on what you're looking for, and I don't think anybody can explain it better than you.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we were concerned with, Gary, was we were looking at all these boxes of files that we have. And so much of the stuff that we're doing is being, put on microfilm, and we're having to scan it, and you have to create all this stuff. And we started looking at what it would take to scan all these documents in. So our first approach at this was actually just imaging all of our documents so that we could eliminate the need for this. I mean, you were there, you saw all row upon row of boxes. When we did the live one, we actually joked about what was like the Raiders of the Lost Ark facility. And our person who was doing the moderating, she had put up there Raiders of the Lost Box, and I thought that was quite apropos as well. So, when we first started talking with you guys, we were looking at what are we going to do? How are we going to scan all this information? And then you guys had such a unique approach with how you're doing the AI. We started going, well, this is something that's not just for us to get the past done, but something that we could incorporate for us to use for the future. And that was something that was really intriguing, especially to myself, but also to the county administrator, Jeff Armbruster, and our special projects guy, Dave Greenspan.
Yeah.
And when we saw what KnowledgeLake had to offer in the sense of us being able to bring in existing information into our system, and then utilizing AI to help us process through this stuff, as opposed to the way we were looking at doing it. And, the original cost was over $3 million in 5 years to get all of this stuff. And that was just looking at the past. That wasn't looking to the future. And what you guys brought into us was something that is, hey, this is something that is not only can you bring in the past, but is something that's going to move you to that future point. And that's what really intrigued us when we first started talking, over a year ago?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Just trying to figure out how this fits, how this would work for us. And, I really love the fact that, I constantly talk when looking for a vendor. My biggest thing is that what I'm looking for is not somebody who's just going to provide me a service, but it's going to build we can build a relationship with, so that we come up with a really good solution that works specifically for us. So often you run into projects, especially IT related projects, and I consider this is kind of a hybrid of a records management, but really is an IT based type project too. They tend to fail if they're not, if the relationship's not there, and we don't train the people on how to use it. And that's one of the things I think that, you guys so far have really done a tremendous job of helping us figure out how we're going to use it and coming out and help us work through what our processes look like. So I think, again, it's a forward-looking approach. This was definitely the solution we needed.
Yeah, thank you for that, Todd, because I just love the way you think about it and describe it. I remember when we were in that meeting it looked like the warehouse from Raiders of the Lost Ark with all of the boxes. I couldn't get over it. And I think it was you that had initiated the conversation. Look, this, barring any unforeseen circumstances, this is all going to be here. This is already what's been. Let's focus on the move forward or the day forward, bringing that in. And then over time, as we get that under control and understood, we will bring in all these other records and we'll have the time to do it. I just love the whole project approach. And I agree with you. We just feel like we've got such an effective collaborator, and there's mutual respect that goes on. It's just a wonderful relationship dynamic.
And we love the fact of what AI can bring to the table in moving forward, and how the whole design of AI and the continuous improvement that AI is doing, what that will be in like 5 years.
Right.
And to get in now on the record side of things, to start being able to process through our documentation with AIs, that is one of the things that was really a real win for me.
Yeah. And I think, when you and I have spoken about this, which is a lot in the last 13, 14 months, it's so many other counties suffer from this, right? And it's like it to find something that actually can address it. And, I know we've got other challenges out there. Microfilm, for example, Fuji has now announced that they will no longer be producing it. And there's even been questions that you and Marilyn and I have discussed at length. Do you really even need microfilm as a backup when you've got archival grade cloud-based storage? So maybe as a backdrop, that's kind of a good way for us to transition into the kind of the meat of the matter of what we've been working on. And maybe to lead off with that, Todd, what considerations do you think maybe that other counties should understand when they're considering deploying an AI based record management capability like you're doing?
Well, one of the big things that I know Marilyn has constantly talked about is that having two eye-readable versions of a document based on how we look at things today. And so, how do you move forward in an electronic format? Because microfilming is that second eye-readable. Well, the first eye-readable is what? The paper.
Paper itself.
We haven't even started really getting into addressing how we can use electronic document management to truly be the solution for a lot of these things. But when you have organizations like you mentioned already, Fuji coming out and no longer doing microfilm, now I think it leaves, if I remember what Marilyn said earlier, was that leaves like one German company that's now making microfilm. And I can't imagine what the cost is going to be when we're down to one manufacturer, because of the fact that there's that demand is going to be there for this. So how do you solve that problem? And when we were talking to you, the one thing that just really, we've had some issues with other vendors in storing our data with other vendors, and those vendors themselves getting breached. And so if that vendor gets breached, then we have issues. And what I loved about the fact was you guys have a solution that sits right on top of our own SharePoint. So now, one, I can control access to the documentation through my standard SharePoint and through my own Active Directory and my own permission settings. So that was huge. And that was a real, that for me, that was a winning solution. The other thing is now, because of it being in my SharePoint, it's now part of my backup solution. And we have a very robust backup solution for the county that replicates the data in 3 different locations. And it makes it so that this data can't be, it's in some locations it's immutable, so it can't be deleted, it can't be changed, can't be encrypted by somebody. It's fully encrypted by us. So there's a lot of things that we can do to protect our own data. We're not reliant on a service agreement with somebody. And so that was a huge benefit, I think, working with you guys, is it gives you the opportunity. But I also when you also provided the opportunity, if we wanted to host the data with you guys, there was that ability to have that data hosted through you. And I think that was, so for other counties that might be smaller that can't do their own SharePoint, that is a tremendous possible solution for these smaller organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point. And well, they're all great points, really, because you're really talking about, the consideration being around how you transition this in, what thinking goes on in it. And you're right. We hear more often than not. It's interesting. We've got a fair mix of organizations that want us to push their data up into our Azure Blob storage up in the cloud. And then there's, like you, nope, don't need it, because if that ever fell into if there was a breach and it fell into the wrong hands, ultimately I'm wearing the target on my back. And I think that's
right.
I think having that option is a good one. Yeah.
Well, I have a backup, a vendor that helps us with their backup, so the target's on their back.
Put it with them. That's good.
And again, I'm working with you guys that specialize in AI, and I'm working with another vendor that specializes in securing backups. And so for me, that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I'm leading on subject matter experts for each of these locations, and that is huge.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge benefit to us.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because we don't talk about that much. We talk about the work being done and is the data secure and are the processes bona fide, right, to actually deliver the work value product that we're expecting. But you're right, we don't talk about what does it mean to you, because if you're not focused, if you don't have to focus on that and put energy into that, it frees you up to do other things that you've got big plans and goals for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what other areas, when you think about just broadly, because there are 48 different divisions comprising the county, what other areas are you focusing on modernizing?
Well, we're doing a lot of modernizing at the county. Yeah, like most government organizations, they tend to lag behind when it comes to technology to some degree, budget shortfalls and stuff like that. So, moving to Office 365 to help us get started in that.
Right.
Utilizing AI in other locations. How do you use ChatGPT? How do you use, some of these other AI tools to help move your organization forward? So those are some of the areas that we're looking at. The one thing, that really was intriguing too, because of how AI is evolving, and talking to your technology team over there and asking them, hey, what are you seeing in the future? That ability, as we start moving into this and get more and more documents, you guys are also enhancing your end of the AI side of things. So now we can start doing queries on our data and asking questions of our data that is just us. It's not one of those things where it's like, hey, this is the whole, it's not the whole AI. The AI it's only our documentation. And that was the other thing that was a nice plus with you, is that this isn't uploading all of our information into the cloud. This is a localized AI that's only working with our data and our documents. And that is huge, and gives us a great opportunity for being able to query through the data in the future. I know one of the things that Marilyn really liked was the fact that that the searchability, the being able to no longer really rely on metadata, that you can now do full document searches. So if you want to see all the documents that have Todd Sharkey in it, you will be able to go in there and do a search. And if you have the permissions for that area, so if you have permissions to see HR, you have permissions to see the IT side of things and the documentation I put together for IT, it's now going to be all available, to you based on that, rather than having to go, okay, well, I have to upload this document into our repository. I have to add this, this metadata to it. And the AI automates a lot of that stuff too. And that's one of the things that's really cool. Plus the fact, when we started looking at it, one of the things that intrigued us was the automation for our fiscal department and automating the filling out of some of the forms that we have to do to get payments processed.
Yeah, that's right.
So an invoice comes in, you guys are scanning it in, pulling off the relevant data and putting it into fields so that it could then be put into a form that we can then send right to the auditor for payment processing. So that was,
that was
a
wonderful one. I'm sorry to cut you off. I loved how you all thought about that too, because it doesn't seem like it's on the. I think organizations tend to get into tell me about your use cases, right? Oh, there's customer onboarding, there's this, there's that, there's taxpayer request forms. We can run forms on the website but you were looking at very specific things to attack, which was wonderful. Like in the case of fiscal, speeding up the time to bill payment. It eliminates several tranches of work that the fiscal people aren't going to have to be chasing people they shouldn't be chasing. And they can move it along at a much, much quicker clip, and then they can get their vendors paid faster so that their credit rating stays good.
And the biggest problem that we have is human mistakes. And so, we talked about some of this, Gary, is that this is not, it's not about replacing the human. It's about enhancing and taking away some of that drudgery of having to go in and having to type put the invoice amount into the form, putting the vendor name. Oh, and did you select the right vendor? Because, this vendor's in there 4 different times under 4 different addresses because there are different divisions. So, this was the wrong, this is not the right vendor for that PO. So it gets rejected, comes back to the fiscal department. They have to figure out, we got to fix that, then resubmit it.
Right.
So, that processing of this can really be a huge help for us getting the things we need done.
Yeah, that's just a great example, right? And to your point, I think the way I always like to put it is get rid of bad jobs, not good people, right? Because at the end of the day, the people are the nucleus around forming up the work. But if they're doing all this drudgery work that's low value but high time consumption, which is really where office work has been for very, very much since its beginnings, to change that equation, right? It's the old Pareto principle of 80-20.
Yep.
I'd rather have my people focused on the 20% value add than all the 80% grunt work. I'll hand that over to a synthetic worker.
Well, and I look at it this way. What would it cost you to hire an assistant for every one of your employees?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I love that.
That's really what we're doing with AI. We're hiring an assistant for every one of our staff members so that they don't necessarily have to do all the grunt work.
I love that. I love that because it is, right? Again, it's all under the heading of it being a collaborator with humans. And we talk about this a lot. I know we've discussed this a lot with retirements, right? The whole effect of the silver tsunami. What if you take out the very best methods and ways that those people that have been around for a long time and they're running the departments, or they've got the tribal knowledge, if you will, about how the organization operates, and you can codify that into a synthetic worker? You've
Right.
basically encapsulated the worker that did it the best in perpetuity. Now, the work may change over time and it may get eliminated or modified in a way that eventually someday it doesn't even look like that or resemble it any longer. But the fact is you're getting it done by a synthetic worker the very same way, the best way, every single time. It's almost like codifying it.
Right.
I guess it is, but so Todd, shifting a little bit away from maybe some of the technological and the business, operational considerations, was there cultural resistance to proposing this type of change?
Well, one of the things that we were really excited about what AI could do. But the concern we had is, in today's day and age, all of the bad publicity out there about AI coming to take people's jobs. And that was a huge concern for us, that's not what our intention was here. Our intention here was to get more done with the people that we have, because right now it's hard to find the people that will work in some of these locations, because it is in some instances it is very much drudgery work.
Yeah.
And if we can eliminate some of that drudgery and make life a little more exciting, then that's helpful. That's really helpful.
Yeah, that's right. And I apologize. I think my slide may have mistakenly advanced one on you.
Yeah, it did.
On the cultural resistance. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but from the cultural standpoint, we were really excited with what was coming down with AI. The other thing that we did is we knew who our audiences were, in the sense with the county commissioners, and
Right.
so and also with the county administrator.
Yep.
Knowing what are their triggers, and knowing what are their things that they're looking for to do, and when evaluating a vendor, finding those things. I think that's huge, and I think that was helpful, because we went to the vendor, we went to the commissioners, and we went to you, and we're like, okay, here's how we want to approach this. This is the best way to approach this, and this is the best way to approach that. So we weren't focusing in on replacing people. We're focusing in on enhancing people. We're focusing in on those sort of things, because that's what we're really trying to do anyway. Again.
Yeah, that's right. And I loved how there seemed to be a really good dialogue from kind of an outsider's view of looking in, that was happening between you and Jeff Armbruster and Dave Greenspan and Marilyn and Teresa and the elected officials, because I could see that on the I would sit in many times on the Friday sessions for the board meeting, which was always very interesting to see. But the level of engagement and the nice questions, I mean, not nice questions in the sense that they weren't challenging you, or like that it was like a rubber stamp. They were actually interested in it. And I really, really liked just the supportive nature and the very, I guess I'll put it, kind of transformational mindset that they had. I think that really helped, because I've seen it go the other way when I've been with clients, whether it's in private industry or other governments, where you almost can tell who's not going to culturally accept this, and it's going to, you're not going to get down a path very far before the whole interest in it dies or it's killed. So yeah, there was just a real mature view to it, and I love that.
Yep.
So I think you actually went through this to have the AI-based capability in assisting with human employees in work, and it's that whole collaborator, that co-worker, that almost at times you can almost think of them as assistants within the workspace, and yeah.
Well, I mean, just from that slide there, the thing that was, I know Marilyn was looking at, and we saw how they take a box out, they create a worksheet, they
Yep.
scan that worksheet in, then they scan the box, the information from the case in there, and then then they have to type that information into their system, and
Yeah.
just the drudgery, and
Yep.
thinking about the fact that we can now give our workers the case, they can scan the case in, and it's
Yeah.
automatically going to fill the information, and now all they have to do is verify it.
That's
You know,
right. And even then, we've
that's so much easier and so much more enjoyable than to have to sit
Yeah.
down at the keyboard and every time you have to open up a case file to type in the information.
Yeah, quite
So-
right. Because it's not right. They're no longer, all they're doing is they're sitting there monitoring a queue for kicked out exceptions from the synthetic worker, saying doesn't match, didn't know what to do with it, can't figure out where to put it. Okay, great. And so then instead of looking at every single page, as you're pointing out, you're looking at maybe every 15th record or every 50th record.
And then think about the on the other end, you've got in the case of like the clerk of courts, you
Yeah.
have the clerks needing to look up information. Now they can easily go in and find the digital format
Yes.
rather than having to go, okay, what box is that in? Okay,
Right.
send a request off the records. Records has to then pull that box, find that case, pull that case out, log it, put, I mean, we're talking to the people who do this all the time, so they know.
Yeah,
what the
yeah, they know
process is.
exactly what the pain point is. You're right.
You don't have to do that anymore. So from the standpoint of the person who needs the information, they can get it quicker, they can have it right at their fingertips, and they're not having to fill out extra paperwork, they're not having to fill, it just is going to streamline a lot of the information stuff that we're going to need to do. So all
Yeah.
around, I think this is going to be huge when it comes to the ability.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
One of the things that when we were doing the live one, I was thinking about, I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you think about the fact that we had information management, then we went to business, knowledge management.
Yeah.
Now we're actually, there's so much information out there that we don't know what to do with. Now we put AI on top of it.
Yeah.
Now it's giving us as humans, it's doing the quick analysis for us so that we can then pull that information out and use it the way we need to, rather than having to do all of that work ourselves. And I think that's going to be freeing up in many cases for a number of people.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Todd. I think, and I like that analogy, right? It was the information age and the original kind of point-based systems,
Yeah.
whether it was mainframe or mini computers, then moving into client server, ultimately up to the web. But then it became more of a knowledge management kind of where do I find all this stuff? And you're right.
Right.
Now we've got this. I almost look at it. There's Kurzweil's book on the singularity. I almost see this as the tip of the spear of that. This is the first instance of the singularity. It's occurring in work.
I'm just happy you guys didn't call yourself Skynet.
Oh, darn, we were just changing our name too. I know I've often thought of putting the logo of, the logo from Skynet from Terminator on a slide to see who reacts to it. But then I think my corporate branding team in marketing they would not, I would get in trouble for that for sure.
Pamela would not be happy with you.
That's right. So when you think about the characteristics, Todd, I think you've gone through some of this actually in selecting a technology partner and rating our ability to deliver against those criteria. I think you've largely gone into those. You said you were looking for a collaborator. You were looking for something where your data was, you kept your data. You wanted something where you knew you were in. We call it a walled garden. And I think you and I actually ended up coming up with the term Tupperware. It's really Tupperware because you're sealing out all the bad stuff and keeping the good stuff inside the container. So your model isn't getting populated with others' information.
Right.
So, and I know you've gone through those. Any other things that you wanna highlight that you may have not have thought to talk about before?
Let's see what characteristics. You know, I think I mentioned this already, that the you know, the thing that we liked with you guys was developing that relationship. That was huge. You know,
Yeah.
being able to have a relationship with a vendor is very key to me. I don't like having vendors where I'm just, you know, you come in and you service us. I had a vendor in the past where every time they came and visited, their solution was, well, just buy more of our product, just buy more of our stuff. And you know, you guys were never that way. In fact, you know, at one point you guys were like, we don't know if we're the right solution for what you're trying to do,
Right.
until we started exploring this whole future case thing. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
I like a vendor who doesn't come to me and say, hey, I got to do all, you know, we can do all of this, no problem, you know,
Right.
and then try to figure out how it works. So
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate those kind comments, because it is kind of a hallmark of how we like to work. If we're not going to add significant value, we don't want to play there, because it's an unhappy relationship, right? Nobody
right,
wins.
right.
I think you spoke to this actually. Was there fear about AI replacing jobs? And we kind of discussed this.
Yeah.
So
You know, there's always that concern with AI these days.
yeah,
You know, there's constant. You go to the media and you constantly see where they're saying, "Oh, you know, AI is coming to replace you," and AI.
yeah,
And I kind of look at it this way: that some of the people I'm hearing is, if you ignore AI, it will probably come to replace you.
yeah,
But if you learn how to work with AI and get it and have it part of how it enhances what you can do,
yeah.
then you become more valuable.
That's
It's
right.
not the AI that's valuable, it's what the AI can do with you that is valuable. And
Right.
that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And that's where I see this being a benefit for the county. Is it's not, you know, to take President Kennedy, it's not what this country could do for you. You know,
Right.
it really is. You know, it's what, you know, what can AI do with you, and not just for you.
Right.
Because, you know, that's the thing. How does AI enhance you and what you're doing, and not? And I think that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would agree with that. Um, and I know I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit here, but I think I'm trying to give the audience that is looking at, hey, what do I need to do? Or, if I'm thinking of bringing this capability in or investigating, what do I need to do to get the elected officials on sides with me, or kind of take their temperature in terms of doing something like this? Are there particular considerations that you saw that worked when you were briefing the elected officials? And um, what were like maybe some of their initial resistances or concerns to the consideration around it?
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing was for us was with with the commissioners and with the administrator, was that demonstration of how AI is going to help automate some of our processes.
Yeah.
And you know, the coolest thing that we did was we were doing the demo with Constantine, and Constantine took one of our forms and, you know, brought it up and showed how AI pulled that information out of the form and put it in the metadata fields that we needed for processing. You know, so you got certain fields that you're going to need for processing something like your invoice amount. And
Yeah.
the thing that I said is, okay, Constantine, how do I know you just didn't type that in? I want proof that, you know, you can show me, you know, you've got my document here. How's this? And he goes, well, you know, you click on this one little button right here, and
Yeah.
it actually shows you where it's pulling the data. And then he went in to show, and he goes, and if you want to fine tune where that's pulling that information for them, so let's say you've got two dates on your form, your invoice date and your due date,
Yeah.
when they, something like that. It can go, well, it knows that this one's the invoice date, but it knows this one's the due date. And, if it's picking the wrong one, you can change and update those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I remember that. That was funny. It was, it was funny with that whole interaction. I loved it. How's the, what do you think the capability ultimately will provide when it comes to audits?
Well, the thing that I like is when it comes to helping, with the audits, is it's going to eliminate the human error.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that you catch with human errors is, going through and, the biggest problem with audits is, what are you safeguarding so that, you're making sure that you're not making mistakes. If you're sending a check for $10,000 for a vendor and you inadvertently put an extra zero on there and make it $100,000,
Right. Right.
because the invoice is wrong. So the AI can go through and pull all that information for you, but then at the same time just give you the opportunity to verify that the information is correct.
Is
And
correct.
you think about an invoice. You have an invoice in. There's a lot of times there's several different places where there's totals information, so you can actually verify. By pulling those multiple fields, you can check to make sure that that's exactly the number we need.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, Marilyn had mentioned something when we spoke about this in the live event about seeing the work that was performed or understanding what the AI worked through to have
Right.
that kind of openness. It's something not even a human can recreate, right? Well, what steps did you go through
Right.
to get to this answer?
Right.
I did that a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
That was 750 ago. Right?
And that's exactly right, because you're going to have well-defined processes.
Yep.
Using the workflows. It's
That's
going to
right.
know exactly what the workflow was.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is another huge thing, because that's one of the things that they want to always see when you do audits is, how are you processing this payment? How are
Yeah.
you processing this document? How do we know that this information is accurate? And, stuff like that. So I think that'll be huge as well. And so, I'm glad
Yeah.
you remembered that point from Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think it's the only one I've remembered so far. And it was only a week ago. Yeah, so you've been in deployment now. We really started when we came back from the new year, right? We really got underway second week of January, maybe.
Yeah.
Now that you've got some lessons and time with us under your belt, what are some of the things that you would draw others' attention to when when preparing for this? I know there have been things around, just kind of as maybe a primer, taxonomy. I know you and
Yep.
Napoleon have had great conversations around that. The staff and kind of getting them up to speed. Any general observations to share there?
Well, the thing that we're doing, I think is huge, is one, we just recently went through the Office 365 migration.
Right.
So we
Right.
really haven't even begun setting up our SharePoint. So working with your team, helping to come up with some best practices for some things, that was helpful.
Yep.
Figuring out how we can lay this out. I'm putting together some documentation that's helpful and willing to share with people on what they need to do for some of the documentation. Getting Napoleon out and just sitting down with each department was
Yep.
huge. The other thing that I would have to say, this is not something you bite off all at once.
Yes.
And we really appreciated the idea of working with you guys to take 4 departments a year for the first 3 years.
Yep.
To
Yep.
get those 4 departments, this our first 4 here, which we already mentioned: Clerk of Board, Clerk of Courts, the fiscal department,
Yep.
and start working with the records department to get some of their stuff.
Right.
Now, we're not going to get all of records because that does entail other departments. So, but
Yeah.
we're going to get some of that stuff that they need and get that moving. And then the neat thing will be is then we'll figure out once we get past this, what's the next 4 departments for year 2.
Yeah.
And start working with them. So we really appreciate the fact that you guys were willing to work with that. So many vendors out there is like, no, we're going to give you've got 3 months to do implementation. And once we're done, we're gone.
Right.
We're not going to help you anymore.
Right. And you got a bridge to nowhere.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we've answered this actually earlier when we were talking. We're not going to be able to do the your turn slides for the audience that's watching this. In the main event, we utilize this to kind of go through and elicit some questions on with the audience interaction. But just wanted you to see these things in the your turn questions, and I would suspect that, Todd, we can still, even in the after the fact, if someone's just watching this as the static presentation of it, feel free to reach out to you or to me, and maybe I probably should have put up a slide, Johnny, of our emails for them to get in contact, but maybe they can get in contact through you and your good team at NAGARA, and you can redirect them to Todd or Marilyn or to me as appropriate.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So that's good stuff. Johnny, I think that's all we have, right?
Yeah, I think
Wonderful.
I'm good.
Well, then, Todd, Gary, well, thank you for today's presentation and for all of you for watching, and to KnowledgeLake for your continued support of NAGARA, our association, and the professionals who serve in this important field. Thank you so much.